Hey, this is Dirk Verbeuren from Megadeth, and you're listening to GhostCultMag.com.
Welcome back to the Ghost Cult Magazine podcast. I'm your recovering sick boy, OJ, and we're back with the Ghost Cult 2023 Album of the Year Countdown. This is part one in our multi-part series. Starting it off is Keefe and Steve, not for a power hour, but for numbers 75 to 41, as voted on by the entire staff of Ghost Cult, except me, because I was sick and I didn't get it in time. But if you can guess my number one record, I will send you 2 Ghost Cult beer cozies. Seriously, try it. Make sure you like and subscribe first. Subscribers only. I don't give out freebies to just anybody. You have until the 20th. Good luck.
And welcome back to another Ghost Cult Magazine podcast. I am Ghost Cult Keefe from GhostCultMag.com. I am once again honored and thrilled to be joined by my friend Steve Tovey, the senior editor of Ghost Cult and the manager and capo regime of all the writers and the big boss with the sauce of all the writing staff. And we are here, episode 1 in our series of counting down the albums of the year as voted on by the staff of GhostCultMag.com. Steve and I are going to be counting down 75 to 41, not necessarily counting them all down, but cherry picking out things to discuss. If you followed our series here at the Ghost Cult Magazine podcast, Steve and I get together every month and chop it up about all the albums that have come out and forecast the ones coming. So this is really the cherry on top of the pie for the whole year. Steve?
Good to see you again, mate. Yeah, doing well. Good afternoon, I think, for you, and a good evening for me. Our typical 2 runny start to these podcasts. So so ready to. It's been a busy couple of weeks putting together all the votes and counting them up and making sure I haven't broken the formulas, because my tech skills and spreadsheet formulas is not the best. And double checking. At one point we had only one double up. I'd moved an album by mistake into 2 different columns, but we fixed it in time, so we're doing well. So nearly 280 more than 280 votes, I think, across our staff team this year, and all good to go.
I think that accounts for a solid third, maybe a little more than, maybe like 40% of all the albums we reviewed were voted on, and I'm sure there's a few that we didn't review that are voted on just for whatever reason. There was a couple of like commercial punk records we didn't review because they, for whatever reason, capacity usually. But it's a really, again, this the word of the year is diversity. That is the year we have probably covered more subgenres of rock and metal and punk than ever before, where this is spread across so uniformly and not like there's no rhyme or reason, it just happened. And so maybe it's again, I always talk about the Spotify and the streaming availability of music kind of affecting people's taste and listening habits. Now, obviously, writers have different listening habits than just music lovers. I'm fascinated by all these things, and I don't know if you have a reason why. Do you have like a Doctor Who like idea why? I've got it. Maybe there's a reason why, but maybe there's no reason.
I don't know. I think we spoke about it a couple of years ago, that it seems to have been over, I don't know, probably last 10 years in particular, trends and stuff seem to have disappeared. So we used to get, like, we had the rebirth of thrash in the noughties. We used to get geographical scenes and geographical bursts. We don't really get that anymore. So I think there are more bands that aren't just doing one thing, aren't just doing one sound, and it becomes, but rather than diluting, it's just become more interesting. So you have bands that will release, I get the wrong one, Blood Command, have an album with 15 songs that have about 8 different styles on it, and they'll flip between one or the other, and it's not a problem. Whereas it used to be, like, other than Faith No More, no one used to really do that. It used to be like, we are a thrash metal band and we'll play thrash, but with a fast picking sort of band, and with a crossover thrash band, we just do that. But even those bands have diversified and will be packing in death metal riffs or black and metal bits, and some of the bands that we'll get to later on, even our more established acts, we look at Enslaved or Insomniums and bands like that, they don't stick in one box anymore. They're not a Megadeth band or a black metal band. So I think it's just become, maybe, like you say, something to do with playlists and different listening styles, but it has become more accepted for artists to do more than one thing. And I love that. As you know, I think I say that quite often. I'd much rather an album had 4 or 5 different avenues and different explorations, then the last track really screwed with you, than 25 minutes of the same thing again and again. So who knows if it will carry on like that. I think so. I think it just seems to be bands are happier doing what they want to do within a song or within a release, and covering multiple bases. And long may it continue for me.
Indeed, maybe it is the ulverification of music, where like whatever we want, you and I have a soft spot for them, especially this last era, and the very first era of Ulver for me personally is also hugely important. But maybe they're all catching up. Maybe they're just all, everybody's just, I feel free, and I'm gonna, I don't want to spoil it because I'm sure you're gonna mention them in this list, but review we just ran talked about a death doom band throwing in a little Blackgate, which would have been abhorrent to death metal fans just a few years ago, as we are, I think we're at the 10th anniversary of Death Heaven's Sunbather now, just coming up. The shows are this week. I'm trying to get to one here locally. It's hard. They're from here, so it's where I'm to get on the list, but yeah, man, I'm with it and I'm for it, and I applaud our staff. Obviously you have people who they like what they like, and a good editor as yourself matches the right review with the right reviewer. Not that they will absolutely love everything that comes across their plate. We strive not to do that. Sometimes as a reward, you give somebody a band they might dig, but at the same time, I think it's very fun and a tribute to our very, again, skilled and tasteful writing staff that they don't shy away from anything. They're open-minded. We haven't had too many terrible like assault type reviews this year. And again, there are peers of ours that's their bread and butter, and they get a lot of clicks, and more clicks than we do, because they air negative and they go to the negative space, if you will, and we don't, but we try not to.
No, and I think we're talking about bands diversifying and not doing the same thing again and again. And I think the one, I guess, I don't know, trend is probably the wrong word, but one of the conclusions I got from looking through the list this year, with the exception of one or two bands that I think we'll talk about in our section, traditional metal, there hasn't been either much quality or much quantity in terms of that heavy metal or that big metal, for want of a better phrase, this year. There's been, like last year we had Halo Effect, we had Monomath, we had Machine. But there's several big metal bands year before Trivium, 2 albums fairly close to each other. There were centre points that were in the middle of metal, or more commercial, more straightforward metal stuff, and we haven't had that this year. Or the bands that we haven't really been picked up on, or hasn't been overly successful. So quite an interesting place to be, because it's probably the first year that there hasn't been that. Like I said, we're looking back over the last 10 years of who our album of the years have gone to. We've had Carcasses, we've had Ghosts, we've had big names, Triviums, Machine Heads, and it's interesting this time around that there isn't something for the year to hang its hat on, if you like. There isn't that centerpiece metal album, but instead there's a whole host of different interesting albums to have.
In terms of an approach, typically I think last year we cherry picked through 75 to 41. Maybe we'll run down 50 to 41 as with a little commentary. But here's a notion I had. I have my list open in front of me. Don't know if you do. I assume you do. And maybe what we can do is we can go in tens and just pick out a few from each 10 group down to 51 or 50, and then do 50 to 41 as like a little rundown. That'll make it different for us this year, and less complicated, unless you have a handful of bands you want to talk about.
Well, I think the main bits for me, so the 75 through 65, I haven't really got a whole lot that I was massively into, but starting off with those, we do pick up on the Spirit Box EP. That's one of the ones that we've collectively picked up on. It's been an interesting one, that this is where some of the larger bands tend to sit. You mentioned some of the albums we didn't cover, so Blink-182, Fall Out Boy sitting in this space. Nice little shout out for Boy Genius though as well. I think glad that we've given some attention to that, and Spanish Love Song. So it's interesting that we're I think how the voting went, these are all albums that picked up a few votes, but they're all low down in people's top 20. So there's a lot of for these records for the bigger releases in the kind of the alternative and the rocky space. But yeah, so those are the main ones sort of sitting in the first batch of 10 that really sort of caught it out for me. Yeah.
A little Ghost Cult meets Pitchfork here, if you will, with those big bands. I would say it's interesting. I thought that I love the Spirit Box EP. Yeah. I think Rotoscope was a little more direct and heavy, and they intentionally went sort of in another left turn for a band of left turns. So I like the Spirit Box quite a lot. I will tell you the only album I have not listened to in this entire 75 that I didn't at least listen to a little is Fall Out Boy. It's just a band I've never, just not for me, not for me.
Fall Out Boy and Blink-182 are the two.
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you what, that Blink single came out, that first single came out at the end of last year, and I didn't like it. And then when the record dropped, that is nothing like that first single. And they started to put out songs leading up to it. I was like, okay, this is really good. I did one listen through of the Blink, and I was like, this is actually very good. Almost a grown-up record for a bunch of people whose their whole career is based on being childish and sophomoric. And it's actually really good. And the One More Time song, will Make a Grown Man Cry, is a tearjerker. Like, literally, I thought I was going to die, and I just want to make music with my friends again. Oh my God. We're all feeling the mortality after the last couple of years. Those guys especially, with 2 health scares out of the 3 guys. For me, gotta talk. I love the ones you pointed out. Allokyria, I hope I said that correctly, on Venerate Records. Commotion is a record, a band I was just keenly barely aware of, and then I went back and listened to that record, and I was like, wow, this is a really good band that should be higher up on people's list and more well known. Love the Royal Blood album at the top of the list. They're also, a great just hard rock band. They know what they are. They come to play. They write good songs. They perform great when they do go tour. Blood Ceremony, thought that would be up a little higher. The Old Ways Remain on Rise Above record. Great sort of, stoner, psych rock, folk rock, Coven metal, if you will. The band Coven. I'm a massive fan of Oxbow, and I love Love's Holiday, out on Ipecac Recordings. Of course, when they played My City, I was out of town to see Metallica. Boo. They're from the Bay Area, and they don't play here often, so that sucks for me. And yeah, I will also say the Boy Genius record is fantastic, and if you're not a big fan of alternative rock or mainstream indie alternative bands, I know that, like, separately, each of the Boy Genius supergroup members are pretty super, and usually people come in with Phoebe Bridgers because she's so popular. I'm more of a Julian Baker fan. Phoebe's great though. She's very, if you're having a tough time, don't listen to her. You're gonna feel worse about yourself. But a lot of supergroups are not super. We've got quite a few on the list. We've got quite a few we reviewed this year. There are quite a few coming next year. But Boy Genius is absolutely super and a special group, and I hope they make more music.
No, that's cool. Yeah. And I was really impressed. I hadn't really dabbled too much in Phoebe Bridger or where Boy Genius are at, but it was an impressive record for me. Didn't know what to expect. Chris Tipple, I think, did the review for us, and his words, we talked about this on our Power Hour stuff. Sometimes you might check in 1 or 2 songs and you're not too fussed, but then when the review comes in, it steers you into checking it out. So that's fun. So the next bit of the list, this is where it gets really interesting for me anyway. From 65, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and run all the way down to 50, from 65 to 50. Now, I would swap out pretty much this 15 for the 40 to 25 because I love this run. And it's one of the bits I did wonder, not for all of these albums, is perhaps the release schedule for some of them coming towards the end of the year meant they weren't picked up by a few people. But we've got a run from 63. I will just read them all out, from 63 down to 50, where I just think it's just an incredible. I've got a lot of time for the Struts. Really like the album. Pretty Vicious. Your kind of Rolling Stones, glam rock sort of stuff. The Ocean down at 62. They've been in our top 5s before with previous records. And I don't think Holocene does anything particularly different to some of the other records. Before, maybe we've all just got a bit used to it. I don't know. But then we've got 62, The Ocean, Full of Hell, Primitive Man with a split. 61, Unearth, great record. I love the Burner record. It All Returned to Nothing on Church Road. That's quite high up in my personal list. So so we're talking 63 to 59, with just 5 really strong records there. Underdark at 57, which we'll cover off in our November Power Hour podcast. But on Church Road, Managed Decline, great record. Yeah, Spotlight, Spirit Adrift, Green Lung, Dying Wish, Immortal, Downfall of Gaia, Harm's Way. So you know what I mean? We could fill up a whole hour talking about this section of the list. I'll give a personal shout out to having said there wasn't too many traditional metal albums that fared too well this year, both the Spirit Drift and the Green Lung albums. I think I'd like to pull attention to both of those, in particular from these. And I'll save my powder on the Underdark record for our Power Hour.
So go listen to that podcast. You're probably going to hear that podcast before this podcast, actually. So that's pretty funny. Maybe we'll link both in each other's descriptions so people know we're self-referential. I also had the same feeling about The Ocean, Unearth, Full of Hell, even though it's a split. Spirit Adrift. These are all bands. Immortal at 52. These are all bands that have been in our top 20 recently. Last albums, top 25, top 30. So I don't know if it's just a glutton of records, this giant bottleneck of music coming out so heavy because of the global everything. The Ocean is a personal favorite of mine. Did not make my top 20, but a beautiful record. And again, like you said, not too different than what they're already doing. Spotlights is a band that just perennially a little underloved as much as they're critic darlings. I love them. I got to see them twice. They were really good this year. I love this record. It's a concept record. They put out an EP of leftover songs that are as good as anything on the record that they just couldn't fit on the vinyl. So they put out a concurrent EP right alongside their record, just literally within a month of each other, which I thought was like, that's how creative those folks are. Love the Spirit Adrift, you know. Green Lung came to me. I had been aware of them from their previous record. Terrific album. Full of Hell is getting to the point where they're almost like Thou, where they can do anything. And I think there's a Thou record coming for next year that hasn't been announced yet, but Full of Hell's doing they have another collab out, you know, this week or out now, and out now as we record this by the time it comes out with Primitive Man, but they have another one. I like that just anything is game for them. Want to also talk about Dying Wish, hardcore-ish, post-hardcore metal band, phenomenal vocalist, getting a big push from Sharp Tone. Yeah, again, Immortal surprised me that more people weren't into it. It didn't seem like we've talked about being a great year for UK metal, a great year for death metal, and a great year for hardcore. A stellar year for traditional black metal bands, or what we think of as the top tier in black metal. I think, you know, we have a live album from Triumph of Death, that's great, but, you know, that's more old school throwback underground metal.
I was going to say, I think without getting into spoilers of what comes on, I think there's been quite a lot of blackened metal, I suppose. That's to pick the words correctly. Second wave traditional black metal, less so. But this Immortal album's just great fun. It's like Northern Chaos Gods Part 2. So, you know, they're just in a really, like Demonaz is in a really good space. We now got Abath and Immortal, so, you know, everyone wins on that. But again, looking at this section, you've got Underdark, Immortal, Downfall of Gaia. I mean, that Downfall of Gaia album we talked about back in March, was it? I think February, March when it came out. It's a really like strong, dark, blackened, you know, good album. So there's a lot going on. Lots to check out.
Fair enough. And again, I'm with you. Some of these, forget it, foregoing my personal picks, which some of these I would have. It's interesting. If you had flipped this list around, probably feel the same. not 75 as one, but if you had flipped, like, you know, again, took out like 20 and just swapped them, I wonder if it would have been, you know, they're close. They're very these are all 8s and higher to me in terms of our grading system, which is again known for being harsh graders.
And to be fair, you know, I'd take 60 odd to 50 odd and switch it out for some of those sitting between 40 and 25. But that's not to disrespect the album sitting above. That's just on personal taste. I think normally we have our top 75s. I wouldn't say I have a little grumble, but I look at a few things. I'm like, really? That score that high? I'm, you know, disappointed that we're pushing that collectively versus this, that, and the other. But I'm very happy with this 75. There's not a record in it that, other than Blink and Fall Out Boy, that I don't care about and don't like. So.
There it is. I mean, definitely not your thing. And I have never been a big Fall Out Boy fan, although I will say that I've seen Blink live. I saw Blink 182 at a Warped Tour and they were fun, but they're not my I'm not their generation. There are quite a lot of emo and pop punk bands that I adore. They were never one of them. But the record, like I said, I will even say as a grumpy old man, it's got great moments. And I'd definitely go check it out. Certainly better than my opinion of the Paramore record, which you have known. I have gone on record as saying was not a fan of the comeback record.
No, I've heard it, but you know, other people in the staff are better placed to comment on Paramore. We defer to them. So.
I have heard it, and I will not hear it again willingly. And I love Hayley Williams, one of the greatest singers in the world. Not that record. Anyhow. If you'll humor me, let's just run down 50 to 41. I'll call out the tracks and you can share whatever feedback you'd like to. I'll note in a few things too. I think this is a very notable block of records also. Not just because of where they are. I think these bands this is a hint of what's to come, I think, in metal in a lot of ways. Number 50, Harm's Way. Everybody do the Running Man meme with their record Common Suffering on Metal Blade. That was a kind of a mid-year-y release that I thought was very strong.
Yeah, I think again, perhaps we've got used to what Harm's Way do, and they've kind of softened some of the edges around it. And I know they had their little post Forever Code Orange deviations when they've gone back to being a bit more sort of straight up metallic hardcore. You will put this on and not be disappointed. If you listen to this record and you're disappointed, you are listening to the wrong record. They're just in a good solid pocket, a really strong, like you say, 8 out of 10 record that delivers.
Right on.
Them.
Right on. Yeah, I think that this is a case, just really quick, this is a case where some fan bases like Spirit Box and Code Orange are game for whatever. And Harm's Way's fans said, no, I prefer this. And they didn't really pick up a new bunch of fans with their experimentation. So they had to kind of go back to the drawing board a little. It's no crime, no shame in that game. Number 49, a very interesting band and record, Body Void, Atrocity Machine, out on our friends at Prosthetic Records.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those that we talked, and it goes back to one of the first podcasts we did when we talked about Kundra last year, about how horrible is a good thing in the sort of music we listen to. And I think Prosthetic had a really good year as a label, a run of some really horrible records that were really impressive. And the Body Void's probably, I think there may be a couple that score higher, but for me, this is like their flagship of disgustingness from Prosthetic. They're moving away from being a death metal, or presumed to be a death metal label, and more into the kind of the heavy extreme sludge, extreme doom sort of vibe. But not something you put on when you're having a few beers and a barbecue, let's put it that way. But in a good way.
Nice. Spoiler alert for the next episode in this countdown series of albums of the year. Tom Osman is now a new convert to horrible. He's down with horrible as a nomenclature. He's with us. Here's a record I thought would rank higher. Tesseract's War of Being, very strong record, fantastic band, K-Scope Records. Seemed like they had kind of a quieter year in terms of volume of releases, but no shortage of great albums on that label. And Tesseract, you know what they are as a band, and they killed it. And then I really was a little surprised at this being this low down.
No, same. And I know we talked quite at length when on the album release, War of Being really sort of resonated, I think, with both of us. I know as a site we've dabbled in and out of whether prog's one of the main sort of areas that we cover. I think we've always supported and encouraged good progressive music, and this for me is one of the best prog metal records, well, other than outside of Devon, for or maybe Leprous as well, for a good long time. I think it's got everything that you want. It's got hooks, it's got long songs, it's got emotion, it works really, the dynamics and the push and the pull of some of the songs just work really well. But on the flip, it's also got catchy moments and hooks, which not a lot of prog metal does. So I'm generally surprised that it hasn't scored higher. We often say, oh, this should be high, this should be high, and what should be lower, but this is one I would have banked on being top 20. And if we weren't as integrous is that word, as we didn't have the same integrity we do, I was quite tempted to bump it up the list just because it deserves it. But I was trained myself. But I do love it, and I think it could and should be an album that, they're a sizable band, but this is an album that could be a springboard to the next level for them.
I agree. I think they can break through with this record to whatever the next plateau is for them, for sure. And speaking of that same vibe, a band that I never shut up about loving, Fuming Mouth at number 47 with Last Day of Sun, Nuclear Blast. And if I'm gonna really get into some hyperbole, I think this record is their Ride the Lightning, and their next record could be their Master of Puppets. I know that's very high praise for anything we do, but I really feel that way. This is a band on the rise.
Yeah, and I think this is another one that we'll cover in more. I think we'll cover in more detail in the November podcast on it. But it's interesting with like heavier bands that sometimes, there's a lot of albums that come out and I was like, oh, this is the death metal album of release, and this is the metallic hardcore album of the week, and those sorts of things. The Fuming Mouth album had a buzz and a lot of build and a lot of expectation building up to it, and it didn't go away on release. You know what I mean? That's when you know it's good. It's not like week one, we love this record, we've forgotten about it by week two. 3 or 4 weeks down the line, with this still bubbling, there's still people talking excited about it. And like you say, it's another album that should set them up to the next step. I do think the scheduling of it coming out start of November is why it's not performed better. To be honest, I think it's one that not everyone in the team will have heard yet or giving it the focus that definitely deserves.
And it came out in a week with a glutton of other records that
Yeah.
eclipsed it, even on its own label. So that's a bummer. But continuing this tremendous run of underground bands, 46 is Portrayal of Guilt, Devil Music, the funnily named Devil Music for that band, Run for Cover Records. We don't talk a lot about them, but they also are a very strong name in music. Portrayal of Guilt, I got to see them live last year, and heard a couple of new songs. They're like, we're going to try out some new stuff on you. Let me know what you think. And they were killer, and I was like, oh my God, if this is where they're going as a band, this is going to be insane.
Yeah, I think they're another band that have somehow found a way to make challenging and abrasive music. Catchy is the wrong word, but land. Find a way to get the hooks in, because the emotion and the feeling and the dynamics is really, really strong in it. So they've it's that mix there, that sludgy, blackened, almost post-hardcore kind of collection of horribleness, but in a way that doesn't put you off while not exactly being warm and fuzzy. So another really good album. Again, horrible metal. What more can you ask for?
They are maybe the second best horrible American band, horrible genre American band, next to Primitive Man right now. Another band I absolutely love, and this was highly anticipated, I think, among our own team, but also all the hipster blogs and websites wrote about this band this year. It was fun to see interviews and news stories pop up with them, even if we didn't get one. Slowdive, Everything Is Alive, from the Dead Oceans label. Slowdive is one of those bands, I think, like, their mythos is almost comes in the door 5 minutes in front of them, but then you hear the music and you're like, oh, it's not hype, it's legit.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you've got a catalogue and a canon to live up to, it's really easy to just to fob it off, listen once and go, yeah, it's fine. Or for a band not to be able to maintain the level of consistency or quality, or to phone it in, all these sorts of things we've talked about with longer term, more established bands before. But again, it's a really strong collection of individual songs, but also as an album. So it works on both levels. Coming back to the format, you can put one song on the cup, you can put the singles on, and they're really, really sort of captivating, shoegazy, post-80s music, post-80s, post-90s. The mix is both in there. Or you can listen to it as an album, and it's a whole kind of journey and a good emotional backdrop there. So I know Reza, who covered it for us, was like the anticipation was unrelenting. It's like, when's it out? When can I have it? When's it out? When can I have it? And then the joy, I think, that it's lived up to expectations. Oh, thank God. So yeah, it's good to see it from that side of things.
Shout out to Reza Mills, and we are going to take one of Reza's ideas and sort of rebreathe life into an idea, something we used to do or tried to do a few years ago. In 2024, the Ghost Cult Magazine podcast, I'm going to feature more of our staff in it. So you and I will always have our spot monthly, but then I think I'm going to do extra sort of additional podcast episodes with our writers and get some POVs from them on stuff and talk about whatever. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasting myself in 2024. Time is going to allow for it. I'm going to make it happen. Number 44 on our list, straight off the streets of New Jersey, Sunrot in the house. Sunrot, The Unfailing Rope, another horrible, great band. And honestly, as good as this record is, they're a whole different animal live. If you can imagine, they're more brutal and savage as a live band, but their records are crushing, and they always are. So I knew this was going to be a banger.
No, and again, I think as we're saying, they're central, along with Body Void and a couple of others, to the almost like the rebirth, whatever you want to call it, prosthetic. Not that they were in the gutter or gone away, but they sort of exemplify, that new breed of, I suppose, of a can't say the word, artist act, that they're working, working with the sludgy, horrible, blackened, evil, but not old school evil, not Venom and Celtic Frost evil, just getting into unsettling sides of the human psyche, but then manifesting it into music. So I prefer the Body Void personally, if we're ranking and comparing the two, but that isn't, like you say, that's not to undermine the Sunrot record. I know Matt Cook absolutely loved it. I think he was, if he could have had a personal subscription to prosthetic at the first half of the year, he'd have had a IV into his veins. He'd have loved it. So.
Maybe we can get a Body Void and Sunrot tour. I don't know how far-fetched that is, but that would be kind of cool.
Did you cope though? Do you know what I mean? That's like...
Cool. Well, what would you come out like? You'd be changed.
Yeah, well, true.
You'd be changed. DNA would be shapeshifted after you'd come out chemically a different person. Here's a record back, if you go back to earlier in the year, when this record came out and the lead up to this record, and we talked about this record ad infinitum. At number 43, In Flames, Foregone, I was on Nuclear Blast. I was convinced this was going to be a top 10 record, but the whole way through. It's still great though.
Yeah, and I know we sort of I had a slightly more, reserved or slightly less positive take on it at the time as well, and I don't know why. It doesn't quite resonate with me the way that other In Flames albums have. And I say that as someone that likes Siren Charms and to a lesser extent Battles, and some of the albums that are less, Sounds of a Playground Fading, that are less kind of vaunted and less loved. But I don't know whether I think for me it paled because it came about 6 months after the Halo Effect album, and I think it still fits in that comparison, in that In Flames have gone back to being heavier and they've gone back to doing more of the old In Flames sound, but they haven't. I mean, let's be honest. This isn't Colony 2 or Horacle 2 or anything like that. This is kind of Reroute to Remain and Clarity type stuff, but the guitars are heavier and the choruses are a bit less the main focal point. It is a very good record. I'm not not disputing that, but I think for me, I still listen to the Halo Effect album 10 times more than than Foregone. But to be fair though, to YouTube Music, it's doing wheeling its way in, because a couple of the tracks keep appearing on my playlist that kick in after the album I'm listening to finishing. I'm like, no, I'm fine with them. I'm good with them. So maybe it went me over long with them, but
it's a shower. It's a grower, not a shower. Here's two interesting things about that really quick to sidebar for one quick second. I think, what's interesting, I don't think we've ever had a situation before where like the majority of former members of a band have made a new band and it's better than the old band, or at least along a certain timeline they're competing. I know KK Downing thinks KK's Priest is going to compete with like Invincible Shield. It's not going to. I like that record also, but not here represented on the list. And then also, boy, I'm really looking forward to more Halo Effect. I'm really looking forward to that band for next year. We have a whole episode coming on that, but it's so good. It's so good. But I don't think that's ever happened before, where like the majority of members from a band left that band, made a new band, and that band is so high quality. We're now like, unfortunately comparing the existent band to the new band. It's weird.
I think we've done that, where I don't think I've had any issues for it. I think I haven't had any issues with Dark Tranquility either. That I really like Atoma and the last 15 plus years of Dark Tranquility. But I'd rather that the focus was kept on Halo Effect. I'm quite happy for that to stay on the back burner if we're going to get anything that's like comparison with Days of the Lost, and like I said, the new single suggests that's going to be the case. So
I'm a massive Dark Tranquility fan, and I'm going to say I feel like they've plateaued a little bit, so maybe the Halo Effect will inspire Mikhail and they'll do some new stuff, but didn't love the last one as much as I thought I would. And in terms of In Flames, you know what? It's the same stuff they've been doing for the last 10-15 years with better production. They changed the production the production is more like the mellow Death In Flames, but not the songwriting. It's a very interesting thing, and it'd be interesting to see if other bands would consider this approach. Anywho, a lot on In Flames, who I thought was going to be in the top 20 for sure. If you had asked me even a month or two ago, I would have definitely had them in, and then I didn't have them in mine, I think, or maybe I did at that. I don't know. I have to go look at my list. No, a pleasant surprise at 42. And an artist that I first saw in the mid-90s that I love a lot is PJ Harvey, one of the best singers of all time. Inside the Old Year Dying. I don't know what Yoda speak this language is, but Partisan Records and PJ Harvey. Brilliant as always. Great review on this one, I seem to recall. And no other notes for me, but I wanted to I don't know if this is a typical artist you would get to hear at home or not, or just for Ghost Cult.
No, and I have to say, you're right. Duncan Evans did a really, really good review for us. I have friends, Lee from Grief Symposium, that are into PJ Harvey that are much better placed than myself to talk about. Been peripheral, never disliked, but probably a bit too in the arty, different pop. Pop's definitely the wrong word, but you know what I mean by that. So, but I like what I've heard from this record, and it seems to be like, again, for someone that's been established and around for quite a while. There's some reinvention. There's doing things in a different way, and they're still bringing PJ Harvey still bringing people along as well, and still both critically and commercially doing well with it.
Indeed, and also check out the alternative rock band Rid of Me, named for one of PJ's records, which I think is very clever and great. And they're trying to have that spirit. Maybe not the talent, but the spirit. I applaud you. For effort, always. And then the last album on our countdown segment here, Steve, is Voyager, Fearless in Love on Season of Mist. We haven't talked a lot about, there's quite a bit of Season of Mist in our year-long sojourn together. Not a ton on this part of the list too much, but Voyager is a band, they have there's almost like they're growing their own reputation worldwide, which is really interesting. They are unique to Season of Mist. They're unique on that label, and I think it's this, not surprised that this album made the list.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of obviously interesting bits around the Voyager record. So one, Season of Mist, very, very much not a Season of Mist traditional type of band. Two, being the Eurovision entry for Australia, which no matter how you cut the globe has never been anywhere near Europe. However, in the spirit of inclusion, I'm more than happy for Australia to be in Eurovision. Why not? But also, they don't actually sound like a Eurovision band. They don't sound like a Season of Mist band. And they're a really interesting prog metal band. So we talked about Tesseract, and I think there's I still haven't figured out how to pronounce it, Temich, that released their album quite recently. Up with those two, I'd have Voyager in terms of the prog metal, prog rock kind of releases for the year. You'd expect of a band that's doing Eurovision to be doing 3-4 minute kind of light rock kind of throwaway stuff, but this is dark, complicated, groove heavy, well written, exceptionally well produced, prog metal. So Gary loved it.
Yeah, of course, fair play. And I would say that was a band we identified a year ago that we were gonna, like, that record was coming and we were gonna review it and we were excited for it. They are an anomaly on that label for sure, and they've done a very solid job promoting them. And that is a big chunk of our list, of our countdown. Obviously we're gonna have 3 more episodes, 2 lengthy ones and a mini one, I suspect. And Steve, I always enjoy these. This has been a stellar year. You have done a stellar job against all odds in some cases. The staff has been phenomenal. We are making some moves to even get better in 2024 somehow. I don't know how I think we're gonna come in at like 590 something on albums reviewed, almost 600.
I know. So I was being geeky and checking back through the previous list. So before this year, 602 was the most amount of reviews we've done in a year, which I think was 2018. If everything goes to plan and we cover off all the ones that are out for review and no one laptop doesn't fall in the bath or something like that, 606 will be where we're finishing the year. So we should be covering the most that we've done in a single year.
It's impressive for any. I don't know who else is doing this many reviews with this kind of staff all over the world, masterfully coached up and managed by yourself. And I'm just tickled that we this is our legacy. If we stop tomorrow, nothing's stopping us, but if we stop tomorrow after 11 years, we are well known, almost best known as a website that reviews albums. It's one of the first things people tell me about us is that we review albums exceptionally well and apparently respected. And so if anybody out there is listening from albumoftheyear.com, please add our website because people love our reviews and we have a lot of them. Almost the most of them, probably, except for, I'm guessing, Pitchforking. If they still do reviews, I don't even. It's been quite a year. I'm thankful for you since this is the end of the American Thanksgiving weekend. Even though it's a terrible holiday in general, it celebrates genocide. I do like the idea of friendship and thankfulness. So I'm thankful for you, Steve. You've been marvelous as usual to work with. You make my life better and our company better and our website better just by being you. So thank you, sir.
Without you, there is no site.
Well,
been up with me and all the...
gladfully less so than in the past. I'm learning slowly how to not take everything on and be the cupbearer. I can't always, history of the world part 1. I can't always be the piss boy with the bucket. I have to dump it out and hand it to someone else sometimes. So lucky for me, I have you, I have Omar, but the whole staff has been amazing. Obviously, none of this reflects on the live reviewers and photographers all over the world, and that list is growing. I'm pleasant as punch. I'm pleased right now where we're ending 2023 in a very high note. So thank you once again for joining me for this. Everybody keep tuning in. If you made it this far, you are a real one. These episodes do seem to be a little more popular than our regular ones. So if you're here or here again, please like and subscribe. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I normally don't ask this of anybody, but I'm asking since it's the end of the year. If you've enjoyed our content, reward us with a follow. We accept mean comments also. Anyway, on behalf of Steve, shout out to our editor Omar. I'm Keefe, Ghost Cult Keefe at ghostcultmag.com. Thanks for listening. Episode 2 in our Album of the Year countdown series is coming next. Stay tuned. Peace.
See ya.
That's it. That's what I was waiting for.
This has been another episode of the Ghost Cult Magazine podcast. Check us out at ghostcultmag.com and follow our socials at Ghost Cult Mag. Until the next time, peace!